For the first time, China's J-16 fighter jets have gone head-to-head with Rafale fighters in simulated air combat. The encounter took place during the Eagles of Civilization 2026 joint exercise between China and Egypt. And it took place in Egypt. Chinese J-16 and Egyptian Rafales took part in simulated air combat scenarios. And this is where the exercise becomes important for India, because the Rafale is also a key figure in the Indian Air Force. On the opening day, Chinese and Egyptian pilots conducted one-on-one engagements. They also exchanged information about the aircraft. That included discussions on flight characteristics, airspace procedures, takeoff and landing protocols, emergency responses. The exercise is expected to become more complex, moving from one-on-one engagements to two-on-two combat and eventually joint operations. For China, this offers a rare opportunity. The PLA Air Force can now train its J-16 against a Western-designed fighter like the Rafale. Chinese pilots can observe its maneuverability and behavior in simulated combat. Chinese instructors can then use the experience to develop and refine tactics against the aircraft. And that is precisely why India is watching closely. The Indian Air Force operates the Rafale. So, for the first time, Chinese pilots are getting structured combat training experience against the same type of fighters that India could potentially deploy in a future conflict. But there is an important caveat. The Egyptian Rafales are not identical to India's Rafales. There are differences in their weapons, sensors, softwares, tactics, and operational doctrine. So this exercise cannot be treated as a direct simulation of an India-China air battle, but it still gives China a real training reference for the Rafale. The PLA can study how the aircraft performs in simulated combat and assess how the J-16 responds. For India, that makes this exercise more than just another international air drill. It is a reminder that every opportunity China gets to study the Rafale could help shape how the PLA prepares to counter the fighter. And this is for the first time they have trained with a Western platform. Let me straight away go to our expert, Air Commodore Dr. A.S. Bahal. Sir, to you.
Thank you, Karthikeya, for inviting me. Actually, you have covered the topic so well. You've gone on to the pros and cons. I can only, bring about a little bit of more additions. This is a second edition of China Egypt Eagles of Civilization 2026 joint air exercise. And it clearly indicates the deepening relations between China and Egypt. More importantly, it has pitted the J-16, which is an upgraded Su-27 twin-engine aircraft, like our Su-30, which is an upgraded version of Su-27. Similarly, this is also an upgraded version. I would put it more close to fourth generation aircraft rather than four and a half generation. So it's not a low observable aircraft. Remember this because this is going to be very important in case there is a combat of J-16 between the Chinese and our Rafale in Indian conditions at high altitude. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. When Op Sindhu took place, they had two brigades of J-16 deployed at Kashgar and Hotan. Kashgar is 600 kilometers from Leh and 250 kilometers from Pangongso Lake is Hotan. So, which means within our area of responsibility and response, they were already operating J-16s during that time. Now, when we talk of what do they learn from this, they, like you rightly pointed out, everything. In fact, they learn about platform characteristics, they learn about radar, they learn about maneuvering of aircraft, they learn about how they can outwit this aircraft and refine their tactics, like you mentioned. But there is a difference. What is the difference? The Egyptian aircraft do not have the 13 amendments that were carried out to the Rafale, that we have 13 modifications, which included the Israeli head-up display, which included the Spectra electronic warfare equipment, which included the special provisioning done to operate this aircraft at high altitude. It included the radar warning receiver that was optimized for Chinese aircraft. It also included, very importantly, the satellite communication systems and missile approach warning systems with very high frequency decoys. Now, when we add on all these systems onto an aircraft which is specially optimized for high altitude to desert operations in Indian environment, then we cannot say the same thing about the Egyptian aircraft. Then next comes the pilot. Next, third comes the doctrine and tactics that we use. So, uh, uh, irrespective of how much they learn from this, they still have to apply it effectively in our Indian environment. Now, I want to talk to you something more in this. Normally in these exercises, there are training frequency utilized by radars, which are quite different from operational frequencies. But the training frequencies do not protect you always to give out certain key information about the radar. Give you an example. The waveform characteristics, which include the pulse repetition frequency, the pulse width, the power characteristics, that cannot be hidden. So certain aspects of the radar still get known to the other side to devise tactics, and especially for jamming or using the electronic warfare equipment. So that is one aspect. The second aspect is it is not just in the Chinese doing it with us. They are also looking at NATO. Now this aircraft forms an important backbone in the Western fleet in NATO operations. Now when they are looking at how to counter NATO, these exercises also take a meaning. Third thing that comes up is that if you remember Qatar and Turkey, Qatar has 6 aircraft Rafale which are deployed continuously in Turkey, and there is a Qatari Turkey squadron which is in Qatar, and they are practicing regularly. Do you think all the information which they do combat, they're sitting there, they're seeing the aircraft sitting in the cockpit, and they're flying a dissimilar air combat training, is being passed on by Turkey to Pakistan? So it's not just that we are going to counter China in this case, we also need to look at Pakistan utilizing these characteristics against us. But again, our Rafale is different. But at the end of it, it always the human being that matters, especially the pilot. You remember the case of Nirmaljeet Singh Seko, who fought against 6 Pakistani sabers, hit at one, damaged the other one, and eventually he was fighting against 6 aircraft, and therefore they overwhelmed him subsequently. But that is the caliber of Indian fighter pilots that are
But
trained in this.
sir, doesn't it really make it challenging for Indian Air Force? One, we are really down on our squadron numbers. Second, uh, we don't have fifth generation aircrafts, and estimates say that China, in another 15 years, will have the sixth generation aircraft. Third, we are not looking at a two front war now. We are looking at a single front. I mean to say, from the
Absolutely.
perspective of Air Force, uh, I mean to say, things should have been improved after the Kargil committee report gave recommendation. I mean, so I was a journalist even
Absolutely.
then. It's, I,
Uh, Kartikeya, you are absolutely right. Today we are reduced to close to 29 squadrons. If we remove the 12 squadrons of Jaguars, Mirage 2000 and MiG 29, which are over 30 to 35 years old, we are left with only 17 squadrons, which are equivalent to that of Pakistan Air Force, leave aside taking on both China and Pakistan. The second and important fact is today there are 300 plus fifth generation aircraft like J-20 and J-35s, which are flying in China, which are operational, and they have been positioned at Tibetan Autonomous Region during various times. And again, third thing is that they already have 2 prototypes of J-16s flying in December 2025, and it is likely that they'll be operational by 2035 when our MCA will be, I mean, if everything goes right, would be inducted, which is a fifth generation aircraft. So I think the Indian Air Force has to look now at jumping this fifth generation, going to sixth generation when they do co-development. But we are buying Rafales. We are buying Rafale F4 and later on F5 versions, which are a better radar version and have more interoperability with respect to drones, and also have data sharing both with drones as well as within the pilots. They can act as mothership also, manned unmanned teaming, and they can
so
also
but why
pass
did
on
we
data.
but why did we really fall behind that today we are discussing Rafales and J-16?
Absolutely. Why we have fallen behind is only one reason. We gave too much of credence to HAL's ability to be able to produce the LCA in the right numbers at the right time with the right capability. The initial operation clearance itself came very late. The full operation clearance came only a few years back, though the aircraft was given orders for the LCA Mark 1A. Leave aside Mark 1A. Mark 140 have not yet been developed. So have not been given to the Air Force. I think 36 to 38 have been given, but there are still 2 to 3 aircraft that are supposed to be given to us. So where is the question of LCA Mark 1A? That's going to come up in December. They are saying 6 engines are with them, but
Okay.
there is a delay in the integration of the weapon systems, radar, which is Israeli radar currently, with the LCA. By the time the LCA Mark 1A comes up, and becomes operational in 2030 to 2032. That is the entire number, if you are very lucky, with all the three production plants working at full go and everything matching and working in India's favor. Then they would be already
Absolutely.
outdated, because that time you'll have 500 to 600 fifth generation flying and 100 odd sixth generation flying. So even now, the government took this decision of getting the 100 and plus 112 aircraft Rafale with F4 and F5 version as an interim measure. By the time the LCAs and the MCA comes up, my own impression is MCA is not going to be given to us before anything before 2037 to 38, because it's not even flown even one sortie till date. So it is only in the development stage as of now, and prototypes will fly probably in 2027, 28. If everything goes right, because the contract has not yet been given. There are three companies. One is the L&T, if I remember right, Tata's, and one more company which has bid for this. But once the contract is
Very
given, then
disheartening.
they'll start working.
Very this is actually very disheartening. We will do a one longer podcast, sir, on this issue, that as to what went wrong and what should be done. And the
Absolutely.
point you suggested, we need to jump. We need to jump timelines now. We can't follow standard timelines. We have to jump that time scale whereby we are there when the sixth generation aircraft arrives.